The first time Grant Ashford told me to throw away my father's class ring, I obeyed him. 3 years later, I died with my name stripped from my degree, my father branded a thief, and Grant standing beneath the gold university crest accepting an award built on our work. The second time he told me to toss the ring, I was already dead once. That was how I knew he was afraid of it. I opened my eyes to the sharp pop of a champagne cork and the sound of 200 people applauding inside Halden University's Founders Hall. Crystal chandeliers burned above me. A string quartet played near the staircase. Across the marble floor, donors, professors, and students wore black tie beneath portraits of men who had spent fortunes making sure their names survived them. My right hand was clenched around something hard enough to cut my palm. I looked down. My father's class ring rested against my skin. The square black stone was scratched. The silver band had darkened around the edges, and the crest was almost smooth from 30 years of wear. Inside the band, beneath a film of dust, were the words my father had engraved after graduating from Halden. Pride is a poor vault. For one frozen second, I could not breathe. I remembered dropping that ring into a rubbish bin behind Founders Hall. I remembered Grant's hand at the small of my back, his voice amused and tender as he told me I needed to stop carrying dead things. I remembered the garbage truck arriving before sunrise. I remembered searching the alley in the rain. Too late. Then the rest came back. The plagiarism hearing. The withdrawn scholarship. The article calling my father a disgraced researcher. Grant's engagement announcement to someone else. The brake pedal sinking uselessly beneath my foot as my car plunged through a barrier on Ashford Bridge. I had died on a wet Thursday in November. Yet the date glowing on the screen beside the stage was September 14th, 3 years earlier. Lena? Grant's voice reached me from my left. My body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders tightened. My heartbeat kicked hard against my ribs. He looked exactly as he had the night I once believed he loved me. Dark hair combed neatly back, tailored tuxedo, silver cuff links shaped like the Halden crest. He was 24, magnetic, polished, and already skilled at making cruelty sound like concern. His father, Chancellor Malcolm Ashford, stood near the donors' table laughing with a chair of the board. Grant glanced at the ring in my hand and gave a small grimace. "You brought that thing?" "That thing." My father had worn it while teaching me algebra at the kitchen table. He had tapped it against coffee mugs when he was thinking. After cancer thinned his hands, he had slid it onto my finger and told me that institutions remembered buildings, not people, unless people preserved the truth themselves. In my first life, grief had made me easy to embarrass. This time, it made me dangerous. Grant leaned closer. "Lena, it's tarnished. Tonight matters. The press is here, and my father is introducing you to the Bellwether Committee. Toss it out before somebody asks about it." The exact words were slightly different, but the contempt was the same. I looked past him toward the black bin beside the service door. In my memory, the ring struck the bottom with a tiny metallic click. Grant kissed my forehead afterward. I mistook relief for affection. Now I curled my fingers around the ring and smiled.
"No."
His expression did not change immediately. Grant was too practiced for that. But his eyes flicked toward my fist.
"No."
I said, "I'm keeping it." He gave a quiet laugh. "You're being sentimental. And you're being strangely invested in a piece of jewelry." The quartet continued playing. A waiter drifted past us with champagne. Nothing in the room changed, yet I felt the first crack open beneath Grant's feet. He lowered his voice. "I'm trying to help you. Your father's history with Halden is complicated. Wearing his ring tonight could invite questions." My father graduated first in his class. That isn't the part people remember. In my first life, I had recoiled from that sentence. My father had died under suspicion after an internal review claimed he manipulated data in a pharmaceutical trial. The university never formally charged him, but it froze his research account and quietly removed his portrait from the medical sciences building. He died 6 months later, insisting the trial records had been altered after he reported irregularities. I had wanted Grant's family to accept me so badly that I let them decide what grief should look like. This time, I slipped the ring onto my middle finger. It was too large. The heavy stone turned toward my palm. Grant's jaw tightened. There it was.
Fear.
Not disgust. Not embarrassment.
Fear.
Before I could press him, the microphone on stage squealed. Chancellor Ashford lifted one hand. Friends of Halden, tonight we celebrate legacy. Applause rolled through the hall. Grant held out his arm. We're expected at the front. I took it because refusing too early would warn him. Rebirth had not given me proof. It had given me memory, and memory was only useful if I could survive long enough to turn it into evidence. As we crossed the room, I studied everyone I had once trusted. Professor Owen Pike stood by the staircase, speaking to a reporter. In 6 weeks, he would accuse me of stealing sections of Grant's bellwether submission. Dean Rebecca Sloan sat with the Ethics Committee, unaware that her electronic signature would soon appear on a falsified review. Chancellor Ashford smiled beneath the portrait of Halden's founder, certain the university belonged to him. And near the rear exit, almost hidden behind a marble column, Professor Mira Holt watched me. Mira had been my father's closest colleague before they stopped speaking. In my first life, she approached me after the hearing and said, "Elias left a door open, but you threw away the key." I thought she was speaking metaphorically. Grant told me grief had made her unstable. 2 months later, she vanished from campus. I looked at the ring.
A door. A key.
The applause rose again as Grant and I reached the front row. Chancellor Ashford began praising the Bellwether Fellowship, Halden's most prestigious academic award. It came with research funding, a faculty appointment, and enough public attention to launch a career. Grant and I were both finalists, though my project was stronger. I knew what would happen in the old timeline. Grant would ask to review my draft, copy its central model, then use falsified metadata to make it appear I had copied him. He would win. I would be ruined. Among this year's exceptional candidates, the Chancellor said, one represents the future of ethical medical innovation. His gaze landed on his son. The crowd applauded on cue. Grant leaned toward me without moving his smile. After the speech, "Give me the ring. I'll dispose of it discreetly." I turned my head just enough for him to hear me. "Ask me again, and I'll announce to the room that you're frightened of my dead father's jewelry." For the first time that night, his smile slipped. Only for a second. But I saw it. So did Mira Holt. When the speech ended, I excused myself before Grant could stop me. I did not go toward the toilets. I moved through the service corridor, past stacked linen carts and silver trays, and pushed through the rear door into the September rain. Mira was waiting beneath the stone archway. She had not aged much in 3 years. Her gray-streaked hair was twisted into a knot, and her severe black dress looked more suited to a funeral than a gala. She stared at the ring on my hand. "You kept it," she said. The words struck me harder than they should have. "This time," I answered. Her eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" I could not tell her I had died. Not yet. I barely believed it myself. "My father said you would understand the engraving." At that, the guardedness left her face. She seized my wrist and turned the ring toward the light. Rain rattled on the arch above us. Did Grant see this? He tried to make me throw it away. Mira looked through the open door toward the ballroom. "Then Malcolm knows Elias gave it to you." Why would a class ring matter to the Chancellor? It doesn't. She met my eyes. What's inside it does. Mira pressed her thumbnail beneath the black stone. Nothing happened. Then she twisted the crest counterclockwise. There was a faint scrape, and the stone lifted a fraction of an inch from the band. My father's ring had a hidden compartment. Inside it, coiled beneath the stone, was a strip of translucent film no wider than a fingernail. Mira exhaled shakily. Elias actually did it. Did what? Preserve the index. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Mira snapped the stone shut and released my hand. Grant appeared in the doorway. Rain-dark air moved between us. His gaze dropped to the ring, then to Mira. "What are you two doing out here?" Myra's face became unreadable. I smiled at him. "Talking about my father." Grant stepped under the arch. "Professor Holt, I thought you left Halden." "I did." Then perhaps you've forgotten that tonight is invitation only. Perhaps you've forgotten I wrote half the research your father claims to have funded. The softness vanished from Grant's expression. Lena, come inside. I heard the command beneath the polite tone. In my first life, I would have gone. Instead, I held Myra's gaze and said, "Where do we read the film?" Grant stopped breathing for half a beat. That was my answer. Myra gave me an address and told me to come alone at 6 the next morning. Then she walked into the rain, without another word. Grant watched her leave. "What film?" he asked. I looked down at the ring as though confused. "You tell me." He reached for my hand. I stepped back. His fingers closed around air. For a moment, the charming mask disappeared completely. His face hardened with something cold and proprietary. "You don't know what you're carrying," he said. "Then why are you so desperate to get rid of it?" The door behind him opened. Laughter spilled into the corridor, and Grant transformed instantly. His shoulders relaxed. His smile returned. To anyone watching, we were still Halden's perfect young couple. He touched my elbow lightly. "Because I care about you," he said. I smiled back. I remember. He could not have known those were the most threatening words I had ever spoken. At 6 the next morning, I stood outside a watch repair shop in the oldest part of the city. The sign above the door read Vale and Son, though the gold letters had peeled until only VLE and SN remained. Dust clouded the window. Behind it, clocks of every size crowded the walls, their hands frozen at different hours. Myra unlocked the door from inside.
"You were followed," she said.
I glanced over my shoulder. The street was empty except for a bakery van and a cyclist waiting at the lights. "How do you know?" "Because Grant sent the same black sedan past here twice." She pulled me inside and locked the door. The shop smelled of oil, brass, and old wood. Hundreds of clocks ticked in overlapping rhythms. The sound should have been chaotic, but it felt like a warning counting down in every direction. An elderly man sat behind the counter beneath a magnifying lamp. He wore a brown waistcoat and held a pair of tweezers in one steady hand. "This is Mr. Vale," Myra said. "He made the compartment in your father's ring." The watchmaker looked at me for a long moment. "You have Elias's eyes," he said.
"People always said that."
In my first life, the comparison hurt because it reminded me what I had lost. Now it felt like being handed a weapon. I removed the ring and set it on a square of black velvet. Mr. Vale examined the crest, then fitted a narrow tool into a groove beneath the stone. He turned it once. The top released, revealing the tiny coil of film. "Microfiche," he said. "Cut from a larger sheet. Old technology. Deliberately inconvenient." "Why would my father hide it in a ring?" "Because servers can be altered," Myra answered. "Cloud records can vanish. People dismiss physical objects as sentimental clutter." Mr. Vale carried the film to a machine beneath a canvas cover. It looked like a small projector attached to a screen. He cleaned the strip, placed it beneath glass, and switched on the lamp. A grid of white text appeared. At first, I saw only numbers. Patient identifiers. Trial dates. Dosage codes. Adverse event classifications. Then I recognized the name of the study that destroyed my father. Project Kestrel, Halden's private partnership with Veron Therapeutics. My father had overseen its statistical safety review. The university claimed he removed 12 adverse reactions to make the treatment appear safer. He insisted he had reported 27 reactions, and that someone reduced the number after submission. The film showed all 27. My knees weakened. Myra guided me into a chair. "This is the original index," she said. "Every source file, physical notebook, consent ledger, and archived sample is mapped here." "Then this clears him."
"No."
"It points to evidence that may clear him. An index is only a map." Malcolm argued the underlying records were corrupted or missing. "Where are they?" Myra enlarged the final column. Each row ended with a code beginning HVA. "Halden Vault Archive," she said. "A sealed repository beneath the old medical library. Before the university digitized its records, major clinical trials were stored there. Access required 2 credentials, a faculty authorization and an alumni cipher." I looked at the ring. Mira nodded. The cipher is engraved beneath the removable stone. Mr. Vale lifted the film compartment and angled it toward me. On the underside, nearly invisible, was a sequence of letters and numbers. M9870, 714. My father's initials. Graduation year. Archive identity. Why didn't he retrieve the files himself? I asked. Myra's mouth tightened.
He tried.
Malcolm suspended his access the morning after Elias reported the discrepancy. I still had faculty authorization, but by then your father no longer trusted me. Why? Because I signed the preliminary review that accused him. Silence fell between the clocks. Mira did not look away. I was told the evidence was conclusive, she continued. Malcolm showed me server logs, amended tables, and an email bearing Elias's signature. I believed the institution before I believed my friend. By the time I realized the logs were manufactured, Elias was ill and refused to see me. Anger rose in me, hot and immediate. You helped ruin him. Yes. The answer was so unprotected that it stopped me. Mira folded her hands. I cannot ask you to forgive me. I can only tell you that I have spent 4 years trying to recover what I helped bury. In my old life, Grant taught me to divide people into loyal and disloyal, useful and unstable, respectable and embarrassing. Mira did not fit neatly into any category. She had failed my father. She had also waited in the rain, because I kept his ring. What happened to you after my hearing? I asked. She frowned. What hearing? I had moved too quickly. The hearing Grant is planning. The clocks seemed to grow louder. Mira studied me. What do you know? I told her enough to be believed, without mentioning death. I said I had seen Grant copy portions of my bellwether model and overheard Professor Pike discussing metadata. I described the accusation that would come in 6 weeks, the forged timestamps, and the ethics panel's decision. Some of it had not happened yet, but every detail was specific. Mira listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Either you are telling the truth, or you are constructing an unusually elaborate breakdown." I'm telling the truth. Then Grant's interest in the ring and your fellowship are connected.
How?
Your model uses the Mercer correction. I nodded. My father developed the statistical method years earlier to identify hidden clusters of adverse events in small clinical trials. Halden never patented it because the Kestrel scandal discredited him. I had rebuilt the method independently from notes he left at home. Mira tapped the projected index. Kestrel is the first proof the correction worked. If the vault records confirm that, your father's method becomes valuable. Very valuable. And Grant wants to claim it. His father wants Halden to own it. The shape of my first life suddenly became clear. Grant had not copied me merely to win a fellowship. The fellowship gave him public authorship of the model. Once I was expelled, the university could develop it without my challenge. My father's disgrace made any claim from our family easy to dismiss. My love story had been an acquisition strategy. A laugh escaped me. It sounded wrong in the dim shop. Mira watched carefully. Lena? He proposed to me with a university crest engraved inside the ring. What? Not this life. Forget it. She did not forget it, but she let the sentence pass. Mr. Vale removed the microfiche and returned it to the class ring. Do not keep this on your hand, he said. Hands can be forced open. I took the ring and slid it onto a chain around my neck, beneath my blouse. What do we need to enter the archive? Professor Holt's credential, he said, and this ring. Mira shook her head. My authorization was revoked when I resigned. Then we need someone else. I already knew who would have access. Dean Rebecca Sloan chaired the ethics committee. In my first life, her signature had been used against me, but at the final hearing, she looked genuinely confused when I referenced the preliminary decision. At the time, I assumed she was pretending. Now I wondered whether Grant had forged her approval too. We go to Dean Sloan, I said. Myra's expression sharpened. We do not know whether she serves Malcolm. I know she hates being made to look careless. That is not the same as courage.
No.
But pride opens doors too. A knock struck the shop window. All three of us turned. Grant stood on the pavement. He wore no coat despite the morning chill. Behind him, the black sedan idled at the curb. His eyes found mine through the dusty glass. Then he looked at the chain disappearing beneath my collar. Mr. Vale switched off the microfiche reader. Mira whispered, "Back door." I did not move. Running would confirm everything. More importantly, Grant was used to deciding the emotional temperature of every room. When he appeared, people rushed, apologized, explained. I wanted him off balance. I walked to the front door and unlocked it. Grant entered with a blast of cold air. "You left the gala without saying goodnight," he said. "You seemed busy." I called 12 times. My phone was off. His gaze moved across the clocks, Mr. Vale, and the cover machine. "What is this place?"
"A watch shop," I said.
"The clocks are a clue." Mira covered a smile with one hand. Grant ignored her. "Can we speak privately?"
"No."
His expression tightened. "Lena." I had once heard my name in his voice and mistaken possession for intimacy. I leaned against the counter. "Say what you came to say." He drew a breath, performing patience. My father's office received a security alert. Someone attempted to access an archived credential associated with Elias Mercer. Mira glanced at Mr. Vale. The old watchmaker remained perfectly still. Grant continued, "I'm concerned Professor Holt is exploiting your grief." "Interesting. I'm concerned your father monitors dead researchers' credentials before breakfast." "That isn't what happened." "Then explain what happened." He came closer. "Give me the ring."
"No."
"It may contain university property. My father bought it. The cipher belongs to Halden." "So you knew about the cipher?" The words landed cleanly. Grant stopped. Only then did he realize his mistake. I tilted my head. "Last night, it was ugly jewelry. This morning, it contains university property. You should choose one lie and respect it." Mr. Vale's clocks ticked around us. Grant's face reddened, not with shame, but with the fury of someone unaccustomed to being caught. He lowered his voice. "You are placing your career at risk for a dead man who already destroyed his own." I moved before I thought. My palm struck his cheek. The sound cut through the shop. Grant stared at me. In 4 years together, I had never raised my voice at him. I had apologized when he interrupted me. I had thanked him for correcting me in public. I had rearranged my ambitions to make his look larger. He touched the red mark on his face. I expected rage. Instead, he smiled. That frightened me more. "Now I understand," he said softly. "This is about the bellwether competition."
"No."
"This is about my father." "It will become about the competition. By noon, Professor Pike will receive a concern regarding your emotional fitness and undisclosed use of restricted research." Mira stepped forward. "Threatening a student is misconduct." Grant looked at her. "So is unauthorized access to protected trial data." "We did not access Halden's archive," I said. He glanced at the machine. "You don't have to believe me," I continued. "You only have to prove otherwise." For the first time, Grant understood that I was no longer asking to be believed. I was making him build a record. He turned toward the door.
Before leaving, he looked back at me.
"Your father had the same problem. He confused stubbornness with integrity." I touched the ring beneath my blouse. "And your family confuses ownership with truth." The smile vanished. He walked out. The black sedan pulled away from the curb. Mira locked the door behind him. "That bought us hours, not days," she said. "Hours are enough." "For what?" I looked at the covered microfiche reader, then at my reflection in the dark window. In my first life, Grant used my fear to make me predictable. He knew I would hide the moment he threatened my reputation. Myra's eyes narrowed at the phrase first life, but again she did not interrupt. "This time," I said, "I'm going to become very visible." By 9 o'clock, I had posted a photograph of the ring. The caption was simple: "My father graduated from Halden in 1998. I'll be presenting the statistical method he began developing before his death at Friday's Bellwether Forum." I tagged the university, the Alumni Association, and every journalist covering the fellowship. Grant called within 30 seconds. I declined the call. Then I emailed Professor Pike a revised title for my presentation, The Mercer Correction, Restoring Omitted Adverse Events in Small Clinical Trials. In the old timeline, I had called it Adaptive Cluster Review. Grant later claimed the generic title proved we developed similar ideas independently. By naming my father and stating the method publicly, I forced anyone stealing it to acknowledge the source or expose the theft. Within an hour, my post had been shared by hundreds of alumni. Most comments were supportive. Some repeated the old allegations against my father. That was expected. What mattered was the response from Chancellor Ashford's office. Halden University does not endorse claims based on disputed research. The statement appeared beneath my photograph at 10:17. At 10:21, I replied, then Halden should welcome an independent review of the original records. They deleted their statement. The deletion traveled farther than the original. By lunchtime, 2 science reporters had requested interviews. I refused both and told them I would answer questions after Friday's forum. Silence, I had learned, was not weakness when everyone else was desperate to fill it. Dean Sloan summoned me at 1. Her office occupied the top floor of the administration building. She sat behind a wide oak desk with Grant on one side and Professor Pike on the other. Pike's thin fingers rested on a folder labeled Academic Conduct. The trap had arrived 5 weeks early. Ms. Mercer, Dean Sloan said, Professor Pike has raised concerns regarding your proposed presentation. I took the empty chair. Grant did not look at me. The fading mark on his cheek had been covered with makeup. Pike opened the folder. The Bellwether Fellowship requires original work. Your title suggests dependence on a method associated with your father. A method Halden says was fraudulent, I replied. If it was fraudulent, why are you worried I'll present it? Pike's lips compressed. Dean Sloan lifted one hand. Let us remain precise. That is exactly what I'm trying to do. I placed 3 printed pages on her desk. My original project registration, the timestamped email in which I submitted my research question, and a notari's scan of my father's handwritten notes. I had obtained the notarization that morning from a solicitor beside the watch shop. My model has been registered under my name for 7 months, I said. Grant received access to my draft last week because Professor Pike placed us in the same peer review group. Grant finally looked at me. I had never challenged the peer review arrangement before. He had suggested it over dinner, then made Pike present it as an academic decision. Pike adjusted his glasses. Peer exchange is standard. Then you'll have no objection to disclosing the access logs for both submissions. Dean Sloan looked at him. Are logs available? Of course, but there is no reason. I would like them preserved, she said. Grant spoke gently. Dean, this is becoming adversarial because Lena is grieving. There it was. The word he used whenever I noticed something inconvenient. Grieving. He had turned my father's death into a diagnosis. Dean Sloan's eyes shifted to him. Mr. Ashford, Ms. Mercer has made a procedural request. I'm only concerned about her well-being. No, I said. You're concerned about metadata. The room stilled. Grant's expression remained composed, but a pulse moved in his neck. I continued. You are going to submit a concern claiming I copied you. Professor Pike would produce file records showing your draft came first. Dean Sloan's electronic signature would appear on a preliminary preservation order she never approved. Dean Sloan's face sharpened. What did you say? I turned to her. Check your signature history. Pike stood. This is absurd. Sit down, Dean Sloan said.
He did.
She opened her laptop and entered a secure portal. Grant watched her hands. Pike stared at the carpet. After several seconds, Dean Sloan's mouth tightened. There is a draft preservation order under my credentials, she said. Created yesterday at 11:43 p.m. She looked at Pike. I did not create it. Pike swallowed. A system error, perhaps. Who is named? Dean Sloan read silently. Then she looked at me. You are. Grant leaned forward. This proves nothing. Professor Pike may have prepared a template for review. Using my signature? Automatic population. Dean Sloan's voice cooled. My signature does not populate automatically. The meeting changed in that instant. I felt it the way sailors must feel wind turn against a sail. Grant tried to recover. Then someone is clearly attempting to create confusion. Yes, I said. Let's remove it. I took the ring from beneath my blouse and placed it on the desk. Pike flinched. Dean Sloane noticed. What is that? She asked. My father's alumni cipher. It corresponds to sealed Kestrel records in the Halden Vault archive. Professor Mira Holt has an index identifying the boxes. Grant's control broke. Those materials are restricted. Dean Sloane looked at him. How do you know what the cipher accesses? He hesitated. I answered for him. Because his father has been monitoring it. Dean Sloane closed her laptop. This meeting is suspended. No one in this room is to access, modify, or destroy records related to Ms. Mercer, Mr. Mercer, Project Kestrel, or the Bellwether submissions. Pike's face had gone gray. Grant stood. You cannot freeze the Chancellor's authority based on a student's accusations. I can preserve university records during an ethics inquiry. My father will reverse it. Then he may do so in writing. Grant looked at me with naked hatred. I had seen that expression once before, reflected in the passenger window moments before my brakes failed. In my old life, I had not understood what it meant. Now I did. He would stop pretending soon. That made him more dangerous, but also easier to expose. Dean Sloane asked me to remain after Grant and Pike left. When the door closed, she examined the ring without touching it. How did you know about the draft order? I can't explain that in a way you'll believe. Try. So I told her the truth. Not every detail. I did not describe drowning in shattered glass or waking beneath the chandeliers. I told her I had reason to believe Grant planned to falsify the submission history, that someone had used her credentials, and that my father hid an index because he expected digital evidence to be altered. Dean Sloane listened. You understand, she said, that entering the vault with this cipher could implicate you in unauthorized access. Then, authorize it. I would need a second ethics officer and security supervision. Good. You would surrender the ring during the inspection.
No.
Her eyebrows rose. The ring stays visible at all times, I said. It can be handled by an independent archivist, but it does not disappear into Halden custody. You do not trust this university. My father did. Look what it cost him. Dean Sloane sat back. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she reached for the telephone and called the board's external counsel. At 4 that afternoon, the vault inspection was scheduled for Thursday morning. At 4:15, my apartment alarm sent an alert to my phone. Front door opened. I was still in Dean Sloane's office. Only 3 people had keys. Me, my landlord, and Grant. I ran. The administration stairs blurred beneath my feet. I crossed the quadrangle without waiting for traffic and reached my building in 12 minutes. My front door was ajar. Inside, drawers had been pulled out, cushions cut open, books swept from shelves. My father's papers covered the floor like fallen leaves. Grant stood in the center of the living room holding the empty chain from my jeweler box. He had expected the ring to be attached. When he saw it around my neck, he laughed once. You really are determined to destroy yourself. I stayed in the doorway and lifted my phone. The recording screen was already running. You broke into my home. I have a key. You no longer have permission. He stepped over a torn photograph of my father. Give me the ring, Lena.
No.
This has gone far enough. You forged an ethics order. Pike prepared a precaution. You searched my apartment. I'm trying to keep you from opening records you don't understand. You cut open my father's chair. His gaze flicked toward it, impatient. Objects can be replaced. That sentence erased the last trace of the man I once loved. I remembered the flowers after my hearing, the soup he brought when I could not eat, the way he held me while secretly arranging my expulsion. His tenderness had never been proof of goodness. It had been maintenance. I raised the phone higher. What happened to my brakes? I asked. He frowned. On Ashford Bridge. I continued. Thursday, November 21st, 3 years from now. For the first time, Grant looked afraid of me rather than the ring. What are you talking about? I'm asking whether you did it yourself or paid someone. His face emptied. That was enough. Not proof,
Not yet.
but enough to tell me my death had not been an accident.
He moved toward me.
I stepped into the hall and shouted, "Call the police." Doors opened along the corridor. Grant stopped. Mrs. Alvarez from the apartment opposite appeared with a wooden rolling pin. A university security guard who lived downstairs came running up the stairwell. Grant looked from them to my recording phone and made the calculation he always made. Visibility was no longer his friend. He smoothed his jacket. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. I looked at the wreckage behind him.
No.
This is evidence. Grant was not arrested that evening. He claimed I had previously allowed him unrestricted access to the apartment. The police photographed the damage, took statements, and advised him not to return. It was infuriatingly small compared with what he deserved, but it created something he could not charm away, a dated report. By Thursday morning, Halden was surrounded by reporters. Dean Sloan led the vault inspection with external counsel, an independent archivist, 2 security officers, Mira and me. Chancellor Ashford attempted to cancel it at the entrance. Counsel handed him the board's emergency preservation order. His eyes moved to the ring on my chest. For the first time, I saw where Grant had learned fear. The Halden Vault archive lay beneath the abandoned medical library, behind a steel door disguised as shelving. The archivist entered Myra's temporary faculty credential, then asked me for the alumni cipher. Mr. Vale had shown me how to remove the stone. I twisted it carefully and read the characters from the underside. M9870, 714. A green light appeared. The lock released with a deep mechanical sound. Inside, rows of sealed boxes filled a cold concrete chamber. The archivist followed the microfiche index to shelf K27. Box after box bore my father's signature across tamper-evident tape. None had been opened since 2001. Mira covered her mouth. We found the original adverse event ledgers, laboratory notes, patient reports, and statistical tables. Every document supported my father's account. He had identified 27 reactions and recommended suspension of the trial. Then we opened the final box. It contained a cassette recording of the Kestrel review meeting. The archivist played it on an evidence recorder. My father's voice filled the vault.
Calm. Tired.
Unmistakable. He explained the missing reactions and demanded an external investigation. Another voice told him Halden could not jeopardize its Veron partnership over statistical noise. Chancellor Ashford's voice. Then came Professor Pike, younger but recognizable, suggesting the table be cleaned before submission. The final voice belonged to Malcolm again. If Elias will not protect the institution will protect itself. No one spoke after the tape ended. The Chancellor's pride did not crumble in a dramatic shout. It collapsed through silence. His shoulders lowered. His mouth opened, but the authority had gone out of him. External counsel sealed the room. By noon, the board suspended Chancellor Ashford and Professor Pike. By 2, Dean Sloan referred the forged signature and Kestrel records to police and the National Research Regulator. Grant still had one move left. Friday's Bellwether Forum was not cancelled. He appeared on stage before a packed auditorium and announced that he would withdraw to protect the fellowship from a private family dispute. It was a beautiful performance. He spoke about respect, grief, and institutional healing. He never mentioned my apartment or the forged order. When he finished, several people applauded. Then he made the mistake that ended him. He looked directly at me and said, "Some people inherit evidence. Others do the work." His pride would not let him leave quietly. I walked to the lectern carrying no notes. Behind me, the screen displayed 2 documents. On the left was the project summary I had registered 7 months earlier. On the right was Grant's bellwether submission, recovered from the preservation logs. Entire paragraphs matched. The central equations were identical. Even my typographical error in section 4 had survived. Grant's face changed. I explained the Mercer correction, my father's original Kestrel analysis, and the vault records that established the method decades before Grant claimed to develop it. Then Dean Sloan displayed the access log showing Grant downloaded my draft 11 minutes after Professor Pike added him to my review group. A reporter called from the audience. "Mr. Ashford, did you write your submission?" Grant approached the microphone. He could have apologized. He could have blamed Pike. He could have remained silent. Instead, he looked at the ring around my neck and said, "Lena would have nothing without her father's name." The cruelty drew a gasp. I almost smiled. "My father's name was treated as a stain when it benefited your family," I said. "Now that the records clear him, you call it an advantage." Grant gripped the edge of the lectern. "You think that ring makes you legitimate?"
No.
"The evidence does." His voice rose. "My family built this university. A board member stood in the front row. Your family administered it." The distinction broke something in him. Grant began listing donations, buildings, appointments, favors. He spoke faster as he tried to prove ownership, and with every sentence he exposed another conflict. He admitted his father arranged Pike's position. He admitted he knew the Kestrel archive existed. He admitted he accessed my draft because he believed Halden had rights to anything developed from its research. The auditorium had become perfectly still. I let him continue. Pride is a poor vault. Eventually, it opens itself. When Grant finally stopped, Dean Sloan stepped onto the stage and informed him that his fellowship candidacy was terminated pending a full misconduct hearing. He looked toward his father's usual seat. It was empty. That was when his pride truly crumbled. Not when the audience turned away. Not when security approached. It crumbled when he realized the name he had hidden behind could no longer protect him. He looked suddenly young. "Lena," he said, as though we were alone. "You know I supported you." I remembered another life, another stage, and Grant accepting my future while I watched from outside locked doors. "You supported me only when you could stand on my shoulders." Security escorted him from the auditorium. He did not look back. The investigations lasted 11 months. Professor Pike admitted manipulating the Kestrel submission and helping create false bellwether metadata. Malcolm Ashford resigned before the board could remove him, then faced charges related to research fraud, obstruction, and unauthorized access. Grant was expelled and later charged over the forged ethics order and the break-in. Police reopened my apartment report after finding messages in which he asked a contractor about disabling vehicle safety systems. In this life, there was no crash on Ashford Bridge. There was no engagement. There was no funeral for a woman whose name had been stolen before her body was recovered. Halden formally cleared my father and restored his portrait to the Medical Sciences Building. I refused the Bellwether Fellowship when the committee offered it to me. Accepting would have allowed Halden to frame justice as generosity. Instead, I licensed the Mercer Correction through an independent public health foundation. Mira became the first director of its Research Integrity Unit. Dean Sloan established an archive policy requiring external preservation whenever allegations involved senior administrators. Mr. Vale repaired my father's ring. He polished the silver, but left every scratch. 3 weeks after Grant's expulsion, a letter arrived. He wrote that I had misunderstood him, that pressure from his father had distorted his choices, and that we had both become casualties of a system larger than either of us. The apology contained 27 uses of the word I and none of my father's name. At the bottom, he asked me to return the signet bracelet he had given me. I found it in a drawer beside a photograph of us smiling. For several minutes, I studied the girl in that picture. She was not foolish. She was loyal, hopeful, and trained to doubt every instinct that threatened someone else's comfort. I did not hate her anymore. I mailed the bracelet to Grant's solicitor, but I kept the photograph. On the back, I wrote the date I woke again, and one sentence: "You were never weak. You were surrounded." Then I placed it inside my father's recovered archive, not as evidence against Grant, but as evidence for myself. Survival had not erased the woman I used to be. It had finally allowed me to believe her. That correction mattered as much as the public one, because no tribunal could restore what I refused to forgive within myself. On the first anniversary of the vault opening, I visited my father's grave. Rain had darkened the stone, and autumn leaves gathered around the base. I placed the ring against his name. For years, I thought grief meant holding tightly enough to keep someone from disappearing. Gran understood that fear and used it against me. He called the ring dead weight because he wanted me to believe love made me weak. But the ring had never been powerful because it belonged to my father. It was powerful because he had prepared for a day when he would not be there to speak. I slid it onto my finger. Mr. Vale had resized the band, and it fit perfectly now. Behind me, bells rang from Halden's clock tower. The university had renamed the Kestrel Archive after my father, though I knew better than to confuse a plaque with truth. Institutions did not grow consciences. People forced them to keep records. Before leaving, I traced the engraving inside the band one final time. Pride is a poor vault. Grant had told me to toss the ring because he believed anything old, tarnished, or inconvenient could be discarded before it became dangerous. He was wrong. The truth had waited inside my closed hand. This time, I never let go.